In 2024, we're celebrating Gibson's 130th anniversary, and what better way to celebrate that than with some absolute icons. Let's check out the Gibson Custom Shop 1958 ES335s. Introduced in 1958, the ES335 I think needs absolutely no introduction. It's probably as famous as the Stratocaster, as the Les Paul, as the SG. I would definitely put it on that like Mount Rushmore of guitars, especially electric guitars, which is quite an interesting little thing. Put in the comments what your Mount Rushmore of guitars would be, whether that be, 4 or 5, anything like that. Let us know. But what we're doing today is we're checking out these brand new Gibson Custom Shop ES335s. Now, as I mentioned, these are 1958 models, so these are based on the first year that the 335 was produced, and it's got a couple of little cool things in it that set it apart from, say, a traditional standard as you would see these days. So we're going to jump in with some specs. I'm not really going to go into the history of the 335 because there's loads of other literature and videos out there that would do a much better job than me. So I'm just going to focus on the guitars that I have with me today. As always, our videos are split up into chapters as well. So if you do just want to hear the sounds of these guitars, the description down below will have the timestamps there, and also we'll have done a few moments with these particular guitars as well. So if you do just want to hear the sounds, click link above my head or in the description there. So let's just dive in and check out these models. So you've got 3 models to choose from. You have the Dirty Blonde version that is in my lap right now. This is a Murphy Lab heavy aged on this as well, which you'll be able to see some of that amazing relic work that's been done to this guitar around about the F-hole, just above where your pick would go there as well. And actually on the back of the neck as well. It's not too crazy. I've seen much crazier from the Murphy Lab, especially with their very heavy age stuff. But this is quite a nice little subtle sort of aging I feel on this, and there's some really, really nice check marks as well when you get up close. That's exactly the same as we have a Faded Tobacco version as well, which let me just get that. Be very careful with that stand there. That's the Faded Tobacco version there, which again just looks just as nice and just as relict. But then if you're not a fan of the super heavy, well, the heavy relicking, because the Murphy Lab does a level above that, there's also this really cool Tri-Burst as well, which has got a light aging on it, which you can still see some of the bits there as well, but you can feel that the paint is a little bit thicker. It kind of gives you more of a canvas to make your own relic marks on it and where you play, especially with like the really nice nitro paint on it. I'm going to get this Faded Tobacco one in my lap just now as well. Now there's a couple of differences compared to a regular 335 like I've mentioned, but let's go through the specs of this and I'll point those out to you just as I hit them. So much like any other traditional 335, the body of these are made of a 3-ply poplar, maple, poplar wood configuration, and that's the same for the back and the sides as well. The main thing obviously being that the 335 has got a centre block through it as well, so it's not completely hollow like a Casino, which means you can kind of cook these that little bit hotter under gain. Now you can see there's a really nice aged binding on the body there as well, but on the topic of binding, and as we move to the neck, that's probably one of the most notable features with the 58 model, is that it is the only ES335 in the catalogue anyway, certainly from what I've read with Gibson, that doesn't have a binding on the neck. Now, it's a really, really lovely rosewood board on there, and you can see where that joins onto the neck, which is solid mahogany, just to double check there as well. I want to make sure that these guitars are getting all the official specs mentioned with them. And it's actually really important as well to mention, just before getting on with the specs, that these are all limited to just 130 each. So there's 130 of this one, 130 of that one, 130 of that one. Maybe by the time this video goes up, they may all be sold out in the world, which unfortunately, but I'm very grateful to get them in my lap for today. Now going back onto the neck, as I mentioned, it is unbound. But one of the other huge differences with this as well is that it's this really, really big baseball bat neck. It's a big, chunky C shape, which slightly different to what you would expect from any sort of traditional Gibson these days. And certainly anybody who's maybe familiar with like the 58 Les Paul or the 59 Les Paul even. Actually, anybody who's played like the Custom Shop Greenie, the Gibson model that they've released recently, whether it be the Custom Shop or the normal model actually, they both got that kind of similar like rounded baseball bat feel to it. Personally, I love it. I'm a huge fan of this. And I think even Aaron in the room, he, not the biggest fan of chunky necks, but you were saying you love this too, don't you, man?
Yeah, it was actually surprisingly comfortable.
Really nice. Chunky neck supremacy. Let's go. While we're still on the neck as well, it does have that classic 24.75 inch scale length, and it's also got 22 narrow medium frets on there as well, so it's kind of a very sort of old school sort of feel to it. I'm usually quite used to extra jumbo frets and jumbo frets just from modern guitars, but these actually, they don't feel like they're, you know, super small or anything like that. Like, by all means, the combination of the big neck and those frets there, it is a really pleasant experience to play on there. And it's also just got the standard dot inlays as well, with it being a 335 and not a 345 or a 355. Moving on just to the classic Kluson tuners up there as well. These feel really good to turn, and I've not found any issues with slipping with the tuning of these actually, surprisingly. All pretty much fresh out of their lovely Custom Shop cases as well. Now, if we're moving just to the last part of the guitar, which is all the hardware and the electronics here, it's of course set up with that classic 335 and Les Paul sort of Gibson style, with a master volume and a master tone for each pickup there that you're able to blend in and out and set them however you want to. You have a three-way selector switch there, which is controlling these custom Bucker Custom Shop pickups. Now, these are very much based on the super old school sort of PAF style, and I'll grab my plectrum as well and I'll just let you have a little listen to these because they sound absolutely stunning. Just proper, you know, quite transparent, like when you need them to be, but they can be really quite, you know, they basically handle everything. I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let you actually hear these just on a clean signal. One last little touch I want to make on the hardware as well is that, much like a lot of the vintage Custom Shop, certainly coming from the Gibson factory anyway, they do pay a lot of attention to the pots and particularly some of the wiring and whatnot that actually goes into these guitars, just to give it that proper sort of old school sort of feel. As I mentioned, and as you'll hear in the sound descriptions, these pickups can handle a lot as well, and they're not the hottest. They're very kind of PAF inspired, which a lot of people consider as like the gold standard of humbuckers, especially for, you know, classic rock and whatnot. Let's say that you can do metal on these, but you certainly want something with maybe a bit more high output. But regardless, that's a topic for another day. When we're looking at the electronics and the wiring particularly that's in there, you've got 500K pots that are on the pots there, obviously. Really good. They sound great and give you lots of scope, but also one of the other little bits that they've done is they've actually got oil and paper capacitors in here as well, which I'm not even going to begin to pretend that I know anything about the wiring and whatnot of some of these guitars. I leave that to the pros. But it's just a really nice attention to detail, especially because it is, you know, a proper sort of old school way of approaching these guitars. And for any absolute vintage fanatics, you'll probably really stoked with that, and it just gives it that little bit of authentic feel to it as well. So that about covers it really for the specs of these guitars. In all honesty, you know, the biggest thing about these is just the absolute craftsmanship that went into them. You can really feel how much care and effort has went into really producing the best, you know, recreations of those old guitars that you can get your hands on. By all means, you know, you can maybe find a few of these on the vintage market, but certainly you're not going to be paying this price for them. They're going to be exceptionally more. So without further ado, why don't we just get into some sounds. I'm going to be running all of these guitars through my pedal board, which I've got a couple of different overdrives, including a Nobels ODR1 overdrive, and also a Friedman BE OD, and I might chuck on Electro Harmonix Big Muff as well, just for some fuzzy goodness at one point. They're all going through our Supro Blackmagic combo, which is set just on nice and clean. And there's two microphones on that, an SM57 and an SM27. So let's hear those right now. Hopefully that showed you just what these guitars are capable of. As I mentioned, you know, one of the biggest things with them is really just their playability, their craftsmanship, and just you can kind of feel that they're, you know, they're meant to be old. They're kind of the most accurate sort of vintage guitar feel that I've certainly felt in a little while, and I thought I'd just put the tri-burst in just because all the other two had their moments while I was talking. But yeah, certainly, as I mentioned, these are super limited, 130 guitars of each model, so they're not going to last long. They're probably, again, by the time this video maybe comes out, they may have already sold, but the links will be down in the description if you do want to check them out at all. But for any vintage Gibson fan, for anybody who's a fan of 335s, or anybody who just loves custom shop and whatnot, I don't think you're going to have a problem with this guitar at all. It's going to be a great addition. It's going to be a really, really good piece to put in your collection, and of course, being super limited as well, as you can you can hold that above and go, yes, I've got one of the only 130 of these in the world, if you're so inclined. But if you're not, let other people play it because it's a really stunning guitar. But regardless, let me know what you think about the brand new and limited edition, I guess, 1958 Gibson Custom Shop ES335 down in the comments. Give us a like and a subscribe if you have liked the video or our content as well. We've got a lot of new stuff coming out over the next few months, which some I'm particularly excited about, so come along with the journey with us. But until next time, I've been Kieran, and these have been the limited edition Gibson Custom Shop 1958 ES335s. Have a great day.